What am I measuring that with?
Your transducer.
Pressure transducer, exactly right. The old pressure transducer, the old diaphragm. Strain gauge right here. I'm measuring that with that pressure transducer. I'm measuring the pressure. And the pressure I'm measuring may not be 21 psi. Maybe something different. So what do I do? How do I change my pressure? How would I change my pressure out when I was playing with my little spray tank? I wasn't playing. I was demonstrating with my little spray tank. Can I give it away? How did I change the pressure? I started cranking down on that little knob, right? Crank down on the knob. So if I can crank down on that knob to get any pressure I want on the back side of that, that allows me to change the pressure. So what do? I reach back and I grab the knob. I start cranking down on it? No, I don't do that. I don't do that. I have a knob that automatically cranks down. It says my pressure is different. I need to change that knob setting. So it sends a signal. Ooh, golly day. Sends a signal. We'll talk about sending signals. Sends a signal that says, change the little butterfly valve. Little valve in there. That's all that a lot of those things are. A lot of times they're just a little butterfly valve. You got the tube and there's a valve in there that opens up and closes up. Change that butterfly valve. And all I'm doing is I'm changing that pressure drop across that. And that changes the pressure of the nozzle. So I say, change that butterfly valve or crank down on the knob. You have a little motor that starts cranking down on it. Until I get to the right pressure. And then stop. And then, if I start going slower, all of a sudden, I'm kind of in a hill, and I'm not going 6 miles per hour anymore. Okay, before I get into that, everybody see how that works? So this is the pressure I want to give me that application rate at that speed. I check my pressure transducer readout. Hopefully it's reading 21 millivolts. Corresponds to the 21 psi. If it's reading anything different, we make an adjustment. Change the pressure so that my pressure transducer is now outputting 21 millivolts, which says I have 21 psi at 6 miles per hour. It gives me this. All of these equations are embedded into these controllers. What do I mean by a controller? Those are the sensors we talked about. We'll talk about soil sensors in a little bit. And then this is the flow meter sensor for the flow. And you don't necessarily need that for the system. We're talking about just pressure transducer. Ground speed sensor here. There's several types which we'll talk about when we get out in the field. And then we have this. The variable rate application controller. VRA. Okay, variable rate. Has that serial port interface. So this is in the back. You look in the back and you see this. So I'm going to talk about this. Believe it or not, I'm going to talk about this stuff a little bit. So you know, so it's not a mystery, hopefully. So then you decide that, oh, I've got to change a certain setting. So you have certain controllers, and I don't talk too much about it right here, but there's actuators that will change this plunge, and this is actually an on-off actuator, but will basically create a pressure drop across that. And you can then change that application rate depending on what you want. Doesn't talk in here too much about actuators for variable rate, but a lot of them are the butterfly valves, electric motors, and there's all sorts of stuff that we'll talk about when we get into it. I expect you to know how to do this. Next system's thought would be, well, if all of a sudden I'm on a hill slope and I can't go 6 miles per hour. I'm only going 4 miles per hour, but I still want 8 gallons per acre. What's my new pressure? So what do? I just, instead of putting 6 in here, I put 4 in here. I get a new gallon per acre here. Come over here, the nozzle's pretty much the same, and I get a new pressure. That's the way control systems used to be set up. In the old days, so think about that for a second. It was the first step of controller. In the old days, what would happen? In the old days, they just set up their sprayer for a desired flow at a desired speed, and they try to maintain that speed through the field, which is fairly easy to do on a flat field. With an undulating field, you know, sometimes it gets a little bit too, a little bit dangerous, especially on turns and stuff like that. Now, the first control system was set up was a speed control system in an attempt to get a uniform rate in your field, irrespective of what speed you're going. I go slow, I go fast, my pressure changes so that I always get an 8 gallon per acre application rate. And that was the first style of automation. Pressure transducer, little butterfly valve, little controller, measures the pressure, measures the speed, controls the butterfly valve so that the pressure's the proper pressure for that speed. Then you started moving into variable rate application. Hard enough to get a uniform rate application out there of 8 gallons per acre with all the things changing, speeds and things like that. Now the goal is to try to get a variable rate application system. So we used pretty much the same setup, but with GPS to say where are you, and now instead of trying to get a uniform application rate, you're looking at a variable rate application. But the speed control is still built into it. So you're just continuing to monitor speed and then control that rate. Okay. Those are the numbers behind calculating the proper pressure to give me a certain flow rate for a certain speed. Now, on the back of this, and I'm going to go into this a little bit, on the back of this controller is a variable rate application. It is a variable rate controller is a serial port. And that is typically the way, I'm going to say the old way, and it's pretty much still the new way of controlling, of sending signals and getting data in. If I had a GPS unit, I could connect it to, I was going to say I could connect it to my computer, but I don't have a serial port on my new computer. But the old computer, you'd be able to connect it right to a serial port. What do I have on my new computer?
USB.
USB. So how do I connect the serial port to this?